got to dedicate this talk to somebody because he's in the hospital. Tom Fuscaldo. Okay. A lot of you old-timers know Tom. He's one of our, how old is he now, Lynn? 94. Okay. He is one of our oldest beekeepers, and he's been keeping bees a really long time. Member of the Northeast Club, but Tom often comes to Essex whenever he can. He likes our club, and he's a sweetheart. So he took a bad fall, and he's at St. Joseph's.
St. Joe's and Patterson.
Yeah, St. Joe's and Patterson. We've got his phone number. If anybody wants to call him, if you guys know. I think John got sent out an email through the state club with his phone number in his room, and he is getting better.
He moved rooms twice today.
Oh, he did?
He's improving.
Okay.
So
I'm sure
when
he's...
you go to the front of St. Joe's Hospital, just mention Tom Fuscaldo if you're going, and they'll update you as to what room he's in.
Okay, good. Good. I'm sure he's giving the nurses a hard time. That's good. Okay, so I had a lot of fun with this talk, I have to tell you. I really enjoyed myself. Ooh, that's too dark, isn't it?
No, it's good.
It's not? It's good? Okay, all right. If I could see the things. Yeah, there they are. Okay, wait a minute. So people have asked me, for some suggestions on how to control swarming in your hives. And it's a hot topic, right? A lot of members in this club are from Essex County. Essex County is pretty urban. We're looking at some of the largest cities. Our club has, Patterson and Newark are part of our membership area. We've got a good bit of, Morris County, Passaic County, and there's some very densely populated areas. So it is the case that you don't necessarily want your bees to be swarming. Yeah. A lot of your bees are just they're gonna swarm anyway, right? Okay, this was supposed to be a movie, Justin. It's another movie in there.
Oh, that's another one?
It's another one. Okay, it's a swarm, guys. It's just a little swarm. So you're not going to stop them from swarming without extraordinary measures. It's not like the bees just kind of hang out and don't do anything.
Yeah, it plays. Hold up.
It plays?
Oh, yeah. You want sound?
Yeah, sound is good.
I don't want it all. I hope you know what he's saying.
A honeybee colony is a superorganism.
I just gotta get those gals over there. I'm not even sure they're from the same hive. But this one, I definitely got the queen.
Yes, I did. Yeah. How did I get her? I just, it's clear that the queen is in there. I just dumped them from a branch and they went in the box. Not everybody went in the box, but the queen is in the box just because.
You actually have the queen.
No, that's at the end. We've got another swarm movie at the end where I find the queen. They were in the back of my truck. You'll see. Anyway, biologically, okay, those of you who just took the short course, we talked about this, right? This is the first talk was biology. Biologically, a honeybee colony is a superorganism, okay? It's like a forest or a coral reef where the individuals in the superorganism are not particularly important, but everybody has a function that contributes to the colony as a whole. So the colony reproduces, not just, queens flying and mating and drones dying in the process, but the colony reproduces by swarming. So stopping them from swarming, is this. It's like telling your teenagers not to have sex. It's not, this is not going to happen, guys. But we can kind of, oh, there we go. Okay, never mind. I just didn't hit the right button, Justin. It was all my fault. So swarms can be an issue. You know, as I said, many of us are in a pretty urban area, and we can't really afford for our bees to be swarming into our neighbor's forsythia bush right on their front porch. Plus there are limits to how many colonies you can have on your property, right? It's like 3 hives per quarter acre. So what happens if you have 3 hives and they all swarm and you've got a quarter acre? You know, this becomes an issue too. So why do bees swarm? What are the factors that trigger swarming? If we can understand some of those factors, you know, that'll help us understand the process and how to stop it. Resources. 99% of the swarms happen in spring, or for us, because that's when our major nectar flows are, May and June. April through June, prime swarming season. Okay. So plentiful resources to support rapid population growth. They go off, there's food, they don't have to worry about starving to death. There's nectar that they can use to build new comb. There's pollen that they can use to raise their population. So, increasing colony size. Both the numbers of bees in the colony, okay, and the comb area. Because there's nectar coming in, they are building comb. So everything in this colony is going up, it's increasing. Congestion of the brood nest, that's the one that we think of mostly when we think about what triggers swarming. You know, it's too many bees in too small of an area, and what happens, that's related to this bottom one, which is the decreased concentration of QMP, okay, queen mandibular pheromone, and other queen pheromones. So the workers, the retinue around the queen, they touch her with their antennae, and then they turn around and pass on her pheromones to the next bee in line. If there's too many bees in the nest, by the time that gets to the last bee, it's very diluted. So, you know, it's like, where's mom? I don't smell her. And this is something we don't think of a lot, but this is definitely a factor. The skewing of the worker age distribution toward younger individuals. Swarms tend to have a lot of young bees. Okay. And that's important. So, you know, we could do that, but I don't think it's going to work too well. Good luck telling him to stop. So what are you going to do, okay? What are you going to do if you actually want to keep your bees at home and not send them off into the woods somewhere or into your neighbor's fascia boards or walls? Well, okay, so what do we normally do? We normally do this, and this, of course, is what we've discussed in our short course. You know, we do reversing of brood boxes, right? That's for the mediums, this is for the deeps. You know, what does this do? It takes the cluster, which has moved up over the course of the winter, and it puts it downstairs and provides empty comb above the cluster, preferably empty drawn comb above the cluster. Okay, and that gives them the perception of having more space. Okay, so that's what it does. Empty drawn comb above the cluster. They don't see stuff that's below them. They always want to go up, and it's like the only important thing to a bee is what's above her, not what's below her. But what doesn't it do? It doesn't reduce the numbers of workers in the hive. It doesn't do anything to increase queen pheromone transmission, right? And it doesn't change the ages of the bees in the colony. It just gives the queen more space to lay. So it does that one thing, and that's all. So what's the next normal thing that we do? Well, we make splits, right? When you make a split, you start with one colony. How many colonies do you wind up with? Two or more. Or more, right? Depending on what kind of split you make and how many you make. So if you had those 3 hives on your quarter acre, what does splitting do for you? You still have 6 hives, right? I mean, maybe they didn't swarm, but you still got too many bees. So splitting does address more of these issues, though, okay? It reduces the colony population. Now I've got, 2 hives that are half the size of the original. It does increase the comb area if you provide plenty of comb for each half of the split. Mind you, I'm talking drawn comb, not foundation. Queens can't lay in foundation. So giving them foundation doesn't really do much of anything for them, which puts new beekeepers at an enormous disadvantage. You can't do a lot of this stuff until you get that drawn comb. Drawn comb is like gold when you're new. And it does increase QMP transmission, queen mandibular pheromone, because you've reduced the worker numbers. So you've increased the concentration of queen pheromone in the hive. So making splits can be pretty effective. Let's look at some of the splits you can make. There's like a million different kinds of splits. The most popular one that I've been hearing about, like in the last 10 years, is the walkaway split. When we started keeping bees, like decades ago, there was no such thing as a walkaway split. That was just a split, But the walkaway split, the idea is you let the queenless part of the split raise its own queen rather than giving them a queen. That's for some reason they call that a walkaway split. Taranoff split is kind of an interesting one. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that because it's weird. Weird is fun. A Mississippi split developed by Richard Addy, okay, and he takes 2 double deeps and splits them into 4 equal nukes. I actually met Richard Addy at an EAS conference in Kent, at Kent University, Ohio, a while back, probably a dozen years or more. And we were walking from the dorm to the university campus, and we're just talking. We're talking about queens and raising queens, and we had this great I had no idea who he was. And then I go into the the room where I was going to listen to a talk, and it turned out he was the presenter. And Richard Addy is the largest commercial beekeeper in the world. Certainly in the United States, he ran something like 90, I think, in the world, Grant, do you think?
Runs around 60,000.
It used to be 90. So, but his son Brent now has the operation. They're based in the Midwest, I think Nebraska maybe, or one of the Dakotas. Anyway, huge operation. I had no idea who I was talking to, but he was a really nice guy, which most beekeepers are, even the real big ones. So a cut down split is similar to pageanting, which I'm going to tell you about in a bit. Flyback splits and even splits, and there's like all kinds of different splits. Yes. She's even dropping her stuff. If you weren't confused before. Okay. Let's just look at this one. This one I thought was kind of fun. I have not done this. Most of these techniques I'm going to tell you about, I've done. I will do this coming spring because I have to give this same talk at EAS in summer, and I better know, I better have done all of these different things before I start talking about them. So you have to bear with me on this one. Okay, so the Taranoff split is a split in which you provide a space between this ramp and the hive, and you take all of your bees and dump them out onto the ramp and make them go back into the hive. Now the foragers and the older bees will fly over that 4-inch space, but the queen and the young bees will not. Right? The young bees have never been out of the hive. They don't fly. They crawl around, and they won't fly over that gap. So you know, you make this thing, it's a ramp, and there's like a cloth here, so you provide like space for the queen and the young bees to cluster under the ramp. And basically you've got, whoops, wait a minute. Okay, so the nurse bees and the queen stay behind and cluster under the ramp, and you give, this is your swarm that you created with the old queen and the young bees, right? Remember that swarms are composed primarily of younger bees? So you just made this colony think that it swarmed. It's exactly what happens, right? The queen and the young bees go off, okay? So it separates, the Taranoff split separates the foragers from the nurse bees, but leaves the queen with the nurse bees.
So are the queen cells in the original hive?
Well, you can do whatever you want in the original hive. You can, yeah, there may have been queen cells in there. So they'll,
It's not like a swarm with the queen cell.
right. So you're making a split. You can either let them raise their own queen or you can give them a new queen. But they'll think that they swarmed.
What about timing?
You're gonna do this in spring. You know, all of these are,
Or June, or when you see.
June is too late, probably April. When you see drones. There have to be mature drones. You know, and the timing also depends on whether you're gonna let them raise their own queen, okay, or if you're gonna give them a queen. If you're gonna let them raise their own queen, there have to be mature drones. And not just drones, because drones take 2 weeks after they emerge to become sexually mature. And they take 24 days to cook. Okay, so you got 24 days plus another 12 to 14 days before they're ready to fly and mate. So, okay, that's Taranoff split. So, there's a bunch of my nukes. If you only take a nuke out of a large colony, rather than doing a 50-50 split, your chances of actually stopping them from swarming go down by quite a bit. Because you may not have reduced the population enough to stop those trigger things, you know, the pheromone transmission and the worker congestion and all those things. Taking out 5 frames is, maybe, maybe not.
You haven't mentioned equalizing though. Right, because you could still reduce the strength by giving brood away to weaker colonies.
That's absolutely true.
Splitting a nuke, so you could end up getting rid of.
That's true. But basically you're making, yes, Leor, you're absolutely right. You can take, you know, and we do. I mean,
Right, that's kind of the it would be reversing and then equalizing when you're reversing as well,
yes,
and you could potentially buy yourself some more time.
maybe. But you're also doing this. Every time you split your hive, okay, every time you split your hive, you got to remember, it is not a linear relationship between the number of workers in a hive and the volume of honey collected. Okay, a hive with 50,000 workers will collect more honey than 2 hives with 25,000 workers each, because of the age distribution of the bees in the hive. Okay, so, and that can be really skewed differently. A big colony is the one that will produce the honey. So, when you split them, You know, unless you do some really heavy-duty stuff to compensate, you're definitely going to lose some of the honey that they would have produced had you not split them. So how do we, what do you do, right?
So how many brood frames do you recommend? If you're running, because I know you run mediums, but like
Yeah.
in a double D, if you are going to split and you don't want to sacrifice too much, what's the, and let's assume it's mid-April, how many brood frames would you leave in the mother colony?
And I don't care about losing, to maximize honey production. I'd probably leave them at least 2 boxes, but I'd be taking a chance that they'd still swarm. So what we're going to talk about is some stuff so that they won't swarm and you still get your honey. How does everybody like that idea? But we have to get weird. Okay. Yep. There are some very oddball ideas out there, and I've actually done pretty much all of these, except the Taranoff Split. I haven't done that one yet. They're pretty intensive. You're handling your bees sometimes twice, looking at every frame. Pretty invasive. If you have like a lot of hives, not practical. You know, Grant's not going to do this. I'm not going to do it. If you have half a dozen hives in your backyard, you can do this. You can do, you know, you can really play around with this stuff. So I'm going to look at these techniques here. There are others, like for instance, I'm not mentioning checkerboarding in here. That's another one, which happens in the brood nest. I don't think it's actually all that effective. Have you tried it, Leor?
No, we were just talking about it.
You were just talking about it.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
No.
I know Charlie Ilesley is a big fan.
I'll try it.
Yeah, I'll probably try it, but I don't think it's...
Just one.
Anyway, let's look at these, because these I happen to know work. Okay, I've done them. So the Demarest technique, of all of these techniques, this and shook swarming are probably my 2 favorites. And, you know, this has been around a long time. This is not, it's weird, but it's not new. And it's wonderful because you can do this and stop them dead in their tracks, even if they have ripe queen cells. And when I say ripe, I mean it's capped. Usually, if there are capped queen cells in there, you just say, you know, aloha, good luck. They're going to go. But it's pretty intense manipulation. It will stop them from swarming, and it'll produce a monstrous honey crop. The biggest drawback is that you need an amount of additional equipment that is equal to what you already have on the hive. Okay. So, and Justin puts this talk on YouTube, so you'll have these slides to refer to. We can even probably post the slides also with the detailed directions. Okay, so here's your original hive. Just for simplicity's sake, I made it all deeps.
Thank you, Landi.
What?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Much easier when it's
Okay, so here's your double deep with queen cells, and figure it's just got, you know, a honey super on there. And first we're going to find the queen. You're going to put her in a safe spot. You know, you can take the frame she's on and just set it to the side. You're going to have to go through this frame by frame and destroy every single queen cell. Every one, which means you really have to look hard. You're going to take all the frames that have any kind of brood, eggs, larvae, or pupae, and you're going to put them in another brood box or boxes. Okay, you're putting the queen, the frame she's on, in a box with empty drawn comb. If there's not a lot of food on the frame that she's on, you can add a frame of food, nectar and pollen. But basically, you're taking her, putting her down here okay, in a double deep, same thing she came out of, with a little food, putting a queen excluder, honey super above that, and all of the brood and comb that was in here goes up here. Okay? And then more honey supers, because you're going to need a lot of them.
Are the honey supers all drawn?
Say again?
Are the honey supers all drawn from?
Yes. That's not as important. What's really important is that everything in this brood nest is all drawn comb. Okay. They can draw out more honey supers, but this has got to all be drawn comb. So after 8 days, you come in here and you look up here and you destroy any queen cells. So you see, you had to go through every single cell here and destroy queen cells, and after another week you've got to go through there and destroy queen cells. You've got to look at every single frame. You can't miss even one. And of course, what's happening, okay, I've got the same entrance, so all of the foragers from here are going back in here and joining the queen. So she's not alone, right? And she starts laying in all this empty comb. So you have separated the queen from the young bees. The young bees are all upstairs. You've given her the old bees, right? And tons of empty space. Now,
Wait, how many empty frames did you get? You gave her 19 empty frames?
yeah,
19.
that's right.
Oh my gosh.
I told you, you need an amount of equipment that's equal to what you started out with. Okay? Yeah. All right. So, right. So you've got to go through, after a week, go through and you destroy any queen cells upstairs. So at that point, because there's a queen excluder here, nothing here is young enough to make a new queen. Because as soon, you know, they will have started queen cells up there because they're so far from the queen, they think they're queenless. But if you go back and you destroy those queen cells, now they're like, oh, we're screwed. No queen, okay? But probably some pheromone is getting through. So what do they do up here? Okay, as that brood hatches out, right? All the bees stay home. It separates the queen from the young bees, which stay upstairs caring for the brood, and the foragers go down to the lower two boxes. Huge amount of empty space for the queen. Right. So as the brood upstairs emerges, the bees fill that space with nectar and make honey out of it. Okay? So any honey supers you put up, they'll fill that with honey too. You've got the whole population that you started out with, and you demerade them because it was a monstrous population that had started queen cells and were going to swarm. But nobody's swarming now. They're all home making honey. You do this during a strong nectar flow, you will get a lot of honey. I have done this. You get tons of honey, and everybody stays home. But you've got a hive that's, yeah.
Landi, are those deeps that have been placed upstairs now where the brood is, where you remove the queen cells?
Yeah, those
So
are deeps.
You're filling deeps that are high up with I want to make that
That is absolutely the case.
for myself.
Charlie, this is one really good reason to use mediums.
And actually for sale.
No, Charles, you can get some mediums from Landi.
I'm actually all sold out as of 2 days ago. Somebody bought the last nuke. Sorry.
Can you do two deeps on the bottom then and two mediums on top?
Remember, you're taking the frames from the bottom, okay, and putting them upstairs. So it's got to be the same size equipment that it came out of. You're not going to, sorry. This is a really good way to, develop muscles.
Landi, tell the newbies how much those deeps weigh when they're full of honey.
Yeah, it's about 90 pounds. I can actually lift them, but I risk hurting myself. I have no problem with the 60-pounders. A medium full of honey, that's fine. A deep,
You have to
So.
use a ladder for that technique,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, and a helper, really. But, but it does, you know, the point is, it works.
Wait, Landi, so because you have two deeps on top,
Yeah,
that's in a way, even if it's strong flow though, in theory, you're gonna have additional supers above that,
yeah,
right?
I put them there. See?
But you have, yeah.
And that's probably not enough, depending on the year.
You did this technique with a strong hive already.
Right, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
This does work though, okay. And it's only one hive. You didn't make another hive, you just made one huge one. Okay.
So, Landi, then in theory, so are you gonna have to do a split anyway? And are you gonna run into the same problem almost year after year unless, right?
These are bees, it's bees, Yvonne. We're always, if you're a good beekeeper, your problem is you get too many bees.
Too many bees and too much of
Too many bees. It's the wonderful problem to have. Then you make nukes and you sell them. Okay, Snellgrove. Now we had a wonderful presentation last year by Parks Talley, who came up from Virginia to talk about the Snellgrove method. Parks is a friend of mine and he's an accountant. So swarming season and tax season coincide for him. When he is busy doing everybody's tax returns and burning the midnight oil, you know, it's swarm season. So he had to come up with a way of keeping his bees from swarming where he didn't have to do all kinds of intense manipulations and spend a lot of time. So he uses the Snellgrove board method. There's different variations on this, but I'm going to give you the basic variation, okay? The basic, just summarize it for you. And if you want more information about Snellgrove, go back and look at our, Justin, do we have a YouTube video of Parks?
No, Parks was here, I think, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Oh, was it that long ago?
Yeah, a little while. Was a while ago. The presentation should be up there though.
Yeah, I think we have his slides, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got his slides. So you can look at his presentation. It's on our website. Okay. So it uses a device called a Snellgrove board, which is also known as a double screen. And Snellgrove board is basically a vertical split, except instead of taking your colony and splitting them in two and putting them on two separate hive stands, you're splitting them in two and putting them one above the other. You can either use it to raise a new queen, or you can use it to create one or more nucleus colonies, but you're doing it upstairs. There's some initial manipulations that will take a little bit of time. Parks does those pre-tax season, and after that, it's, you know, it's pretty easy sailing. You're opening doors and closing doors once a week, or, you know, once every 5-6 days, and that's it. That's all you have to do. But what it does is it relies on keeping the older bees with the queen. Again, you know, we're trying to remember the queen and young bees swarm. So if you separate the queen from the young bees, you're reducing that factor in the swarming impulse. So, okay. And why? Why does the queen want to leave with the young bees? Because they're going to a new home, which is basically a hole somewhere. It's a cavity. They have to build comb. It's the young bees that build the comb. Between 8 and 15 days, those wax glands on their abdomens are active. So if you've got bees that are, you know, foraging age, they're not biologically tuned to produce wax. Plus, young bees have active brood food glands. So all of the new eggs and larvae that this queen will create as soon as they get to their new home have to be fed. So you want young bees to feed them. That's why. So if you can separate the queen from the young bees, you can discourage swarming. And that's what this device does. Notice that there are doors on 3 of the 4 sides of the Snellgrove board. And they're top and bottom, okay? The 4th side is just closed, doesn't have any doors. So you do this to prevent swarming before they have started queen cells. Demaray, they've already started cells. You're cutting them out. Snellgrove, they have not started cells. There is a variation of this that you can use when they have started cells, but it's a little more complicated, and I'm not going to go into that now. So here's our strong colony, okay, with the queen, and no queen cells, but they're strong. You're looking at them, you're thinking these gals are going to go, you know. So after we manipulate them, what we're doing, we're putting in the bottom box the queen and the frame you found her on, 1 frame of capped brood and drawn empty comb. So 2 frames came from here, the frame with the queen and a frame of capped brood. And everything else is just drawn empty comb. Then we've got a honey super. Then we've got our Snellgrove board. Okay? And upstairs, we're putting a few frames of nectar, pollen, and honey, all of the brood that you got down here, and all of the nurse bees that are on the brood. Okay?
What do you do with the extra frames?
There shouldn't be any extra frames.
Shouldn't be?
It should all work out.
Oh, right.
See, because I've got 20 frames here, and I got 20 frames there.
Right.
I'm just redistributing stuff.
Oh, you don't have a honey soup.
Although
What's that?
I put like a whole, okay, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. You do have extra frames. Yeah, because I've got 7 or 8 frames that I put in here of empty drawn comb, which means I've got 7 or 8 frames that, you know, I had to put somewhere else. You may have to make up a nuke.
And then for the technique, do you want to give them a honey super that's not drawn out so they have more to work on? Or do you want drawn comb in the honey super?
I will always go for drawn comb before I go for foundation if I'm trying to control swarming. They have to have a place to put the nectar. If you don't give them drawn comb, there is always a danger that they're going to plug the brood nest with nectar. So really there's 2 principles involved in stopping swarming. Okay, one is you have to give adequate room for the queen to lay eggs and raise brood. And the second is you've got to give the colony adequate room to store nectar. Because when that nectar is coming in, they're bringing it in and they'll put it wherever they can put it. If they plug the brood nest where the queen doesn't have any place to lay because it's plugged with nectar, you know, they're going to go. So, okay, step by step, any honey supers you've got, take them off, put them to the side, find the queen, okay, same as Demaray, put the queen and her frame in a safe place, set them to the side. Empty box, frame of capped brood, the frame with the queen. If there's not enough food on the frames, those 2 frames, you can give them an extra frame of food. And fill out the box with empty drawn comb. Something to note, if you're running a triple medium system rather than a double deep, you can't do this with a single medium. You need at least 2. 1 medium just isn't really quite enough space for the queen. Put your queen excluder if you use it, some honey supers, and then the Snellgrove board. and the side with no doors, this side faces the front of the hive when you set up the Snellgrove board. Okay? Next, you put the box with all the remaining brood, including at least one frame of eggs and young larvae, because you're going to want them to raise a queen. Add 2 or 3 frames of food, inner and outer covers on top, and open up one of the side doors, the upper side doors in the Snellgrove board. What does that do? That provides an exit for the upper colony, because you've split the colony, and what's upstairs, okay, is going to raise its own queen. It's like a walk-away split, but you put it on top of the original hive. Okay? So one of the side doors is the exit. 4 or 5 days later, you're looking to make sure that they started a queen upstairs. They should have picked a young larva and began a queen cell from that young larva. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to close the upper door on that side and open the lower door. So all the foragers that have been going out from the upper part of the split will come back in and find themselves downstairs. And the foragers are the older bees, so you're adding the older bees to the queen downstairs, okay? And then we're going to open, now you can't leave the upstairs bees with no exit, right? They have to be able to come and go. So you're going to open the top door on the opposite side. And then those upstairs bees have that other exit. Okay? And then 4 or 5 days later, oh, wait, we're already there. Okay. Yep, okay, we're here. 8 or 9 days after the original split, or 4 or 5 days after you change the doors, okay, you're going to do it again. You're going to close the upper door and open the lower door, okay, so that the foragers that have left from the upper door are now coming back and going into the lower door. And then you don't do any more door changing. At this point, you know, they've got a nice queen cell happening upstairs, and you're going to have a nice new laying queen upstairs. The downstairs bees have had an opportunity to make a good honey crop because they've gotten all the foragers from upstairs, plus all of the bees that the queen raised in all of that comb that you gave her, and they haven't swarmed. So at that point, you can either, this is a great way to requeen your colony, right? If you want, because another way to reduce swarming is to have young queens, right? We talk about a colony with a young queen is far less likely to swarm than a colony with an old queen. So if you pinch the old queen on the bottom and remove the Snellgrove board and just combine the two halves, now you've got a new colony with a young queen. And you got a lot of honey. And if you're an accountant, you know, you were able to do people's tax returns instead of messing with your bees. Okay, so let's compare these two. Both methods separate the queen from the young bees. Both methods keep all of the bees on the same hive stand. Both methods need quite a bit of additional equipment, and they can both produce a bumper honey crop. How are they different? Demarest allows transmission of queen mandibular pheromone vertically, okay? It's one enormous colony. Snellgrove doesn't. Snellgrove is really two colonies. You can combine them later, but it's a vertical split. No new queen is raised in Demarest. Snellgrove creates a new queen. Snellgrove is done before the queen cells are started. Demarest can be done with ripe queen cells present. Demarest is a little more labor intensive. Yes, very weird. I suspect all of our new beekeepers are going cross-eyed at this point. Don't panic. This is pretty heavy-duty stuff for experienced beekeepers, okay? So if you just took the short course, remember I did warn you. You're here mostly to meet everybody and enjoy the pizza and look forward to all of the weird things that you can do in a few years.
To you is this.
Uh-huh.
Why would you spend weeks doing this stuff when you could accomplish the same thing in 8 minutes by making a nuke?
You may not be legally allowed to make a nuke on your property. Come on, Grant, this is fun.
Out there saying, oh my God, Landi made a nuke. We're going to arrest her and take her nuke. You can't even get the bee inspector to call you back. How's she going to come and do that?
Okay. All right, everybody go home.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you kill that queen,
Yes.
and that left, do you wait a couple of days before you introduce the queen into the whole hive, or do you just kill the queen and then just pull the board apart and then?
It really depends on the time of year. If there's a nectar flow, I'll just give them a little smoke and take the board out and say, you're cool. Because as long as there's food coming in, bees are very forgiving of all kinds of change and are more likely to accept a new queen. If it's during dearth, I'd probably set up a feeding station somewhere so that they're getting some food, or feed them and introduce the queen more slowly. Maybe using newspaper method, or I might even put her in a cage. Yeah. So let's.
Do you always pinch the queen, or can you let them duke it out?
What?
Do you always pinch the queen in that method, or would you let them duke it out themselves?
Well, I wouldn't let them duke it out. I mean, I would look at the brood patterns, but unless the old queen was way better than the new queen, okay, I'd always want the new queen. I'd want the younger queen. Yeah. You know, if the old queen was like a breeder queen or something, I'm not going to pinch her. But I might, if she was a really good queen, I might put her in a nuke. Grant, you know I love nukes. Okay.
Yeah, but then you're going to get arrested.
Now the bee police only come and get you if you violate bee space. Then they'll come get you.
I will add one thing to this conversation. Some of us are married to mates who will say, not one more. Add it up, not one more. But if you go condo, according to Landi's methods, then you can, well, it's the same.
It's just one.
What do they know what you're doing?
I know it's 15 feet high, but it's just one. Okay, let's continue here. Pageanting. I learned about this one when I was reading a book on comb honey production that Joe Trimo gave me for Christmas one year, written by Richard Taylor. And I was like, wow, look at that. I never heard of that. And I had never heard of it before I read that book. So, but it was kind of an interesting thing. I did it. You know, I did it a couple of years ago and had some fun. So pick a strong colony, getting ready to swarm, and they have queen cells. You move the whole hive a few feet to one side or the other. You set up a new bottom board, okay, and a single box of foundation. New beekeepers, foundation. A queen excluder, honey supers, inner and outer cover, okay, in the original spot. Yes, this is a great method for making comb honey. And I'm going to show you illustrations, but I'm just trying to give you the overview first. So the original hive, which is over here, okay, there's the original hive location, and this is where you've moved that hive. So I'm looking in the hive, and I'm finding the queen. And I'm going to move her and the frame she's on, okay, back to the original location. So she's going in there with all of that foundation below the excluder. Okay, and you got to make sure there's no cells on the frame that she's on. And I'm going to take this hive, which is the old hive. I'm going to destroy all but a couple of nice, big, fat, ripe queen cells. You know, my favorite ones. The other ones we're going to destroy because we don't want them to swarm and cast after swarms. We just want them to raise a new queen. And after a week, I'm taking this one, which has the cells. This is the original hive, and I'm moving it over here. There's a lot of moving of equipment in this method. Obviously, you don't have to pick up the whole thing. You can disassemble it and reassemble it, but you're moving stuff. And you got to be careful when you do that because they're raising a new queen. So you can't jiggle those frames too much or you will risk damaging the queen's, you know, the developing queen. Particularly on like day 14, 15, the queen's wing buds are developing. And if you shake that frame or whack the frame during that time, her wings will not form properly and she'll never fly to mate. I've done this, okay? I know, and I raised a beautiful queen, no wings. Yeah, so after you've got your harvest, you combine the splits and you put the young queen, which is the one over here, on top. If you put the younger queen on top when they duke it out, usually the young queen wins. Just so you know. That's what Richard Taylor says anyway. So here it is graphically, okay? Here's my original hive, drawn comb, bees and brood. I'm taking this original hive, moving it over 2 to 3 feet to one side. In its original spot, I'm putting up a new hive that is foundation, okay? And some honey supers. I'm taking the queen, finding her and putting her in this new hive, okay? And over here, I'm replacing that frame with another frame, and I'm either leaving them with a couple of good queen cells, or if you want, you can give them another queen. Well, I don't know why you would. Then I'm taking this and putting it over on the other side. Okay? So.
The honey super frames, they're drawn out, correct?
Doesn't have to be. I've used this method to make comb honey. When you're making comb honey, it's all foundation, thin surplus foundation. A lot of moving in here. So, what does it do? It separates the nurse bees from the queen and bleeds the foragers back to the queen's location, right? Because all of the foragers from that hive are going back here. This is the original spot in the middle. So as soon as I move it over here, what happens? These foragers will go to the closest spot, which again is here. So the foragers all get bled back to where the queen is. Okay? Gives the queen plenty of room to lay and reduces the population by splitting. Now, one difference is you're putting the queen on foundation. Okay. Results in 2 colonies rather than 1. And this was the killer for me, this last one. is you have to have enough space on either side of your original hive to put a whole other hive. You know, I've got like 25, 30 bees in a yard, and they're, you know, they're far enough apart that I can get between them. I can put equipment down comfortably, but they're really not far enough apart that I can put a whole hive in between. You know, so I was kind of putting them in the front to the side and over here, and it wasn't working all that well. So, you know, I had an issue. But if you have a little more space in your bee yard, you could play around with this. Again, this stuff is not for the faint of heart.
So, Landi, question on the pageanting side. So both hives are making honey? No.
Yeah.
Because you're losing the foragers.
I am losing the foragers here, but this was the original hive, so they actually have drawn comb, okay? And they're raising a new queen, but while they're raising a new queen, they don't have any brood to raise, right? They don't have a lot. I mean, just what they got originally. So you can give them a honey super, and they're gonna, you know.
So which one is making the comb honey? The original one, the all foundation?
Yeah.
And you have only older bees? Where is the wax coming from?
She's pumping out brood. You know, they'll draw comb here first.
That's like how many days later? What's the time frame on that?
Remember, this is all in the middle of the honey flow. They actually, I got 2 comb honey supers out of them. The one issue that I had, you know the problem I had with it? They put pollen in that lower honey super. I was like, what did you do? You know, it's comb honey. You're not supposed to put pollen in there. So next time I do it, I would probably maybe put a drawn brood comb there, and then, you know, then the honey super upstairs. Yeah, they put pollen in it. So I had to devise a new marketing ploy and put a little label on my comb honey that said, with real bee pollen. If I'd been very clever, I would have charged more for it. I couldn't bring myself to do that. Okay, so, yes, pageanting. Shook swarming, okay. I like shook swarming better than pageanting, you know, because of the, and this will be it. I won't give you anything more here to try and digest. So,
The pageant here, but going back to that.
yes.
Hive that gets the foundation, they're getting 9 frames of just foundation?
Right.
Okay.
And you've got, and the frame that the queen is on. Now, if the frame that the queen is on doesn't have a lot of food, you would give her a frame of food. You know, that's true of all of this. You don't want to starve your queen.
So I run into the problem where sometimes I put in foundation and they don't draw out, like I'll put like 2 or 3 frames I want them to draw out, and they don't do it evenly. How would you prevent
They don't do it evenly?
Yeah, something like if I guess there's too much space maybe or something.
Yeah, you got a bee space violation.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that your foundation frames are really together. Don't space them out evenly, push them together. If there's any extra space, have it be on the outside.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Once it's drawn, then you can, once it's drawn, I take out a whole frame, okay, and space everything else evenly. But while they're drawing foundation, you really have to respect the bee space. Okay, shook swarming. Shook swarming is creating an artificial swarm. But you are doing it, so this is, you're swarming your bees for them, basically, okay, which means that you caught the swarm, right? They didn't fly away, they're still here. But you do have to, you know, yeah, you're not guessing which ones are going to swarm or if they've already, you know, yeah. So, anybody heard the term in conjunction with AFB? So we talk about shook swarming colonies during a nectar flow that as a way of saving the adults in a hive that has contracted American foul brood. You can't do it when there's no nectar flow, okay, or when there's not enough time really for the bees to recover from this. But if you find a case of American foul brood in spring, you can shake the bees onto fresh foundation. They have spores of AFB in their honey stomachs, but they will use those to build comb in the new hive. And when it's bound up in the wax, it's no longer contagious. They're not feeding it to the brood. Okay, so depending on the time of year, you can sometimes save the adult bees in a colony with disease. You can never save the brood. You know, the brood's that brood frames have to be burned. But you may at times be able to save adult bees.
Oh, American foul.
American foul brood. Yeah, we're not talking EFB here. We're talking like the hard stuff. Okay, so strong colony, uncapped queen cells. Remember, uncapped, you can do stuff. If they're capped, hasta la vista, baby. So you're going to move the hive off its stand, and instead of that hive, you're putting a single box of foundation, bottom board, queen excluder, honey supers, and inner and outer covers. Does this remind you of any other method? Like pageanting, right? I took the original hive off the stand, but I'm putting that hive, instead of putting it to one side or the other, I'm putting it behind the original hive and facing in the opposite direction. Okay, so, but before I do that, I'm taking about half or 2/3 of the bees. Okay, the number of bees that would be in a swarm, it actually is 2/3 to 3/4, but I'm taking a bunch of the bees from the original hive and I'm shaking them onto a sheet in front of the new hive. And you want the queen to go into the new hive. Okay. So sometimes bees will abscond. You can put a queen excluder between the bottom board and the first box, that single box, for a few days. After that, they won't leave. It's actually kind of rare that they abscond anyway. Old hive goes behind the new one with its entrance facing in the opposite direction. You can let them requeen themselves, or you can give them a new queen. Up to you. Once you pull the honey, combine the hives, again keeping the younger queen. So here's what it looks like. Here's our parent hive. Got queen cells, and we're moving this one behind the original one with the entrance facing in the opposite direction. I'm putting a single brood box on the original hive stand with foundation and shaking the bees in front of this, letting them walk in, making sure that the queen goes in there. You know, if I know where the queen is, I can take her and just put her in there. Then I don't have to worry, you know, about her walking in. And again, this is another really good method for producing comb honey. This is what it looks like from the side. Okay, so there's the original location. Here's the entrance. I gave them only this one brood box. I give them just the one brood box because I want them to draw out the comb up there. And there's the old hive facing the other way. So this one worked for me pretty well because I have room behind. Right? I didn't have room on either side, but I was able to put the hive behind. So let's see, what does it do? It reduces the overall hive population, and it increases the percentage of foragers that stay with the old queen. But it doesn't totally separate the foragers, right? Because I've taken all of the foragers from the parent hive that went here are going back in here, and the queen is here. So I'm adding old bees here, but of course I didn't take all the bees out. So when I shook the frames here, of course, some young bees went in there too. But I've certainly increased the percentage of older bees in there. Okay, so it's kind of similar to the Taranoff split, right? Because I'm shaking the bees out, but I'm not totally separating the queen from the young bees. So you do end up with 2 hives and 2 queens, and because you're putting them on foundation, make sure to do this only during a really good strong nectar flow. Yep. Okay. Oh yeah, and that's the last, that's Justin, movie.
Yes,
Movie. This was just a really fun swarm that I had. That's a bee butt. Okay.
I dumped this swarm yesterday into the back of my truck. And clearly I didn't get, it's over here somewhere. Get hurt inside. Be nice to actually see it just there, you know? If I could just pick around there, life would be a lot easier. I don't see it. So we're just gonna have to do a brush. See her up in here either.
There were so many bees back there. Just wait.
Lots of bees in here. Check out the size of these. This is a big swarm. At least 5 pounds. And I'm going to say probably a good bit more than that. So, tell these girls to go downstairs. Let's see. We can get these girls to go in there. I don't know if I've got mom there, but. As soon as I get the queen in the box, everybody else will go in. Not seeing her.
My son was doing the photography here. He's a Marine, but not a beekeeper.
So the idea is to get as many bees as you can in the bottom of the queen?
Yeah, I got to get the queen in.
No sense in getting yourself all aggravated. Look, they're starting to build comb up there.
Behind my smoker, they're building comb.
How long were they there? Overnight?
I don't even remember. Maybe overnight. had to be a 9-pound swarm. I swear.
Here she is. She's right in here. Come on.
Yeah, I see her.
I just saw her in here. Where are you? She's a little, there she is, see her?
Yep.
See her? Right here. Right here. Come on. Right there. And now she's in the box.
Oh my God.
Ladies. Look at all the bees in this corner. Oh my God. Queen that I was putting here looked like a virgin to me. So I can't imagine if this is an after swarm. But sometimes they do some really odd things. You know what I'm saying?
Weird things.
That are not written in the books. Because bees don't really read the books. We write the books, but bees don't read the books. So.
Hey, why didn't you just move the box over there?
This is more fun.
Doesn't make a good movie.
Trying to freak out my son.
How many times you get stung doing this?
I don't remember.
Do they get pissed off?
Huh?
Do they get mad?
I don't remember getting,
So you're putting both queens in the same box?
yeah, whoever was in there is there. I just want to get them in a box. I can always split it later if I need to. That's it. Yikes. Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, now that we're all totally cross-eyed, like that baby, any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Dave.
So in the beginning of the presentation, you talked about reversing the boxes.
Yes.
So when you reverse the boxes, bees kind of like their order of things. So in the springtime, the bees mostly are in the top box.
Right.
In the bottom box, at a certain time of year, certain time of the springtime, there's pollen. So when you reverse the box and put the pollen on top,
Right.
what does that do to the order of things? In your opinion, do you reverse the boxes or just leave them alone?
I reverse the boxes, and putting the pollen upstairs is perfect because the queen is, I want the queen to lay brood upstairs. And if the pollen is up there, okay, they'll move it out of the way, but it's right there for the nurse bees to eat and feed the brood.
Nice.
It's perfect. Yeah. And you're right, they like to put the pollen downstairs. Yeah.
I have a similar kind of, well, it's not a similar question, it's slightly different. I was noticing how these weird approaches it really seem to boil down to successfully creating these monster hives with huge foraging staff,
Yeah.
and getting to that stage without them swarming. So I stumbled across this approach, and I don't really know too much about it, but it has to do with basically using 3 deeps permanently, basically as your brood nest all year round. And I was wondering if you ever heard of that approach and have any ideas or opinions about it.
Grant, you ever heard of that?
Yeah, there's people that think that it's not gonna, I mean, bees are gonna swarm whether you got 4 boxes
Right.
or 10 boxes.
They're going to
That's a
swarm.
fact. Now, unless you do something to alter their thought process by either taking sealed brood away, and that's at the right time. It's all about timing. That's the
Yeah.
one thing Landi didn't really talk about so much. It's all about the timing of when you do splits or you take brood away to the time of your honey flow.
Mm-hmm.
There's a period in there that you either have to make your nukes or splits or something stronger so that you can collect that profitable honey crop, or you just have a little thing that dinks along all summer long.
Right, it's true.
It's all about the timing. If you do it too late, it's
too late,
small.
yeah.
If you do it too early, it gets too big and swarms anyway. It's all really about the timing. And you can easily have a double deep and do all that reversing, and you go in and at the right timing, you pull out 3, 4, 5 frames of sealed brood at the right time, and that'll eliminate your swarm. It's a population density issue.
So the right time is
It's all about the right timing.
what is in bloom at the right time?
Well,
Different for different
It
areas.
doesn't matter what's in bloom. It's about the strength of the colony. So every colony is different. Every single one, the timing is slightly different. But you can go in and kind of adjust your timing by, oh, that's a really strong one. You could pull 4 frames of brood out instead of 2 frames. So if it's real strong, you pull more out, which sets that, it's that emerging brood that's going to
Yeah.
take the population from here to here. And that's where you wind up with the swarming issue.
I tried doing it like about 4 weeks before the first major
It's about
nectar
6
flow.
weeks before your honey flow.
So-
in order for things to recuperate
So that-
correctly.
That's
And
around-
what you're talking about, does that follow reversing your hives, or do you not reverse?
Well,
It's a different operation.
I'm a different operation, but
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
what we do wouldn't pertain to
Yeah.
what you guys would do. But if you have a double, we'll just say double deeps or triple mediums, whatever it is, and you get all that stuff reversed just prior to those bees getting down into the bottom box, that's the key. To me, that was always around the 25th or so of March when I was in Jersey. So we
And he's
would
a little
reverse
south.
Very early. No, Landi, I'm talking about New Jersey.
Yeah, but central New Jersey rather than northern New Jersey.
Well, you have to play it all where you're located, but
Yeah,
we would always reverse very early.
yeah.
Okay? And when we did that, we would come back around the 5th or so of April, and we would actually be starting to put honey supers on
Yeah.
with excluders.
And that would by and large,
Now everything is there. By about 2 weeks later, generally those colonies are good. And they're ready to be split because now they're starting to get into the swarming mode. So around the 15th to the 20th
That's
of
when I did it
April
too.
is always a good key
To pull
to
brood.
start pulling some brood. The way we always did it was we went in and we took left or right, we just took the first 5 frames. You had honey, pollen, brood, blah, blah, blah. And then we would put foundation in. 4 or 5 frames of foundation.
On the outside,
Right in the center.
on the center.
So what that did was it pulled away a lot of sealed brood, and it gave them a lot of empty space right in the heart of them to have room to grow. Plus they had honey supers. So it's all about timing and density of your colony.
Yeah.
That's all swarming is.
And in
Now,
that,
is it 100%? No, you're not going to get it 100%, but none of these methods are going to do it 100%.
Right.
and the brood, you made nukes with that?
We would
Yeah.
make nukes,
Yeah.
or if you don't want a lot of colonies, like Charlie's wife doesn't want him to have any extras, apparently, well then you just take 5 from this one and 5 hypothetical. 5 from this one, 5 from that one. Now you you're gonna make a big crop of honey with that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But here's the second thing, if you let them raise their own queens, then you're gonna miss your honey.
Yeah,
Right.
Because that colony doesn't rebuild.
no,
So when you're doing things like this, you need to know what your goal is. Is it just to eliminate swarming, or is it to produce some honey? Now, if you don't want more colonies, you temporarily make more, you get your honey crop, and you combine them back.
Right.
And then you're status quo, but you've reaped the rewards of the season.
But that pulling of, so I will pull,
Sealed brood.
I'll pull sealed brood to make nukes, if I'm going to do it, around April 15th. And I've already reversed 2 weeks earlier. So it's pretty much the same timing, just maybe 5 to 7 days later.
Sealed brood, you're basically taking a whole nuke's worth of bees,
Right.
oncoming bees, out of the equation, which really sets that thing back. Now, if you get behind, say you get behind, you got your daughter's wedding, you got this, you got that, you got to have COVID outbreak, whatever it is, you can go and take an empty deep or medium or whatever you use and split that box right in half. So what you're going to do is you're going to leave the bottom box where it is, you take the empty, you put it in, and the one that was on top, put it on top, going into 3 boxes.
Right.
All that's doing is putting this huge void
Above.
in between 2 deeps full of brood. It's a huge void. So you just went from 2 to 3, but the empty space is in the center. That's only buying you a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's only allowing you to get caught back up. So you can do that, and that's a marvelous thing to do for eliminating a lot of swarms, because all of a sudden it's an expansion and it's a separation of that brood nest, which will slow everything down.
no, that's drawn comb or foundation?
Drawn comb.
Drawn comb.
And
But
you
don't,
can do it with foundation.
but don't do it too
But
early.
You can't do it too early.
Because
with
if you do it
foundation,
too
because then
early-
you'll get cold.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll get chilled brood if you do it too early. Okay.
It's all about timing, and timing is weather, and timing is, there's lots of dandelions, but it's 41 degrees.
Yeah.
Dandelions aren't going to help you when it's 40 degrees.
That's
The
right.
bees can't access it. So it's all about that timing. It's
Or it
very,
rains
very
for
important.
2 weeks.
And that's like
What's that?
reversing the boxes, and it's 70s, and then you think you can reverse the boxes, and then it snows.
We
That's-
always tried
Then
to
they get
stay
cold.
on the schedule no matter what the temperatures were, because relatively the environment is about the same, give or take, maybe a week from year to year. So we always tried to have all our reversing done by the 25th or the 1st of April. And we had colonies up
Yeah.
in the northern parts of the state too, so.
I try and get them reversed around the first few days of April. Pretty much the same
Every
thing.
yard is going to be different.
Like a
also.
little before dandelions bloom. You know, when I see the dandelion buds are swelling, that's a good time to reverse.
This is all in my calendar too, right? That doesn't.
Yes, well, yeah, some of it is, a lot of it is. You know, the problem is, it's like what Grant is saying, it's like we can't give you dates. You know, you can't give an exact date because every year is a little bit different.
A lot of this is really experience.
Yeah,
The weather gets crazier and crazier.
The only way you
It's
get
true.
it is to keep trying
yeah, and see what happens.
and manipulating your own system.
Right,
But the main important thing of all of this is you really have to understand the biology and the growth of bees. If you can understand that, what it takes to get here, then you will start to understand the timing better. But you really have to understand the growth and the population dynamics of what happens when the growth happens in the hive.
yeah.
quality is always better than quantity. So if you're a beekeeper that has in the spring 3 or 4 little junky colonies, combine them all. Throw them all together. You got three framers, combine them all. Now you have one good hive. Give that hive now a month, and you can split that thing back off into 3. Okay?
And they'll be decent.
And now the weather, the timing, everything is in the right place for those 3 to be productive again. It's all really about timing, and I know that's way over a lot of people's understanding, but it's quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
Because that quality will give you a honey crop. Quantity will not.
The beauty about some of these methods, like the first 2 especially, the Demarest and the Snellgrove, is they're not that dependent on timing. You just have to do them during the major nectar flows.
And don't forget, your major nectar flows here don't really start until the middle of May.
Yeah,
Locust. Is your first beginning.
May 15th.
Okay, you do have maybe some buildup, depends where you are, and some extra on autumn olive.
Yeah.
Very rare, but you can. You get further south into Bordentown, you've got more of that stuff. But it's really a lot about timing. And
Yeah.
it's very hard to teach that.
You just have to keep observing, you know. Yeah. Anyway,
Once they combine 2 weak hives together, so how do you get the queen? Do you put 2 queens together? Or
You let them figure it out. Because if you go say, hey, you know what, I think you're the bad one, and you kill that one, okay? But you don't know which one is better. So and the other thing with that is that you do not know whether that queen was from last fall, which is still a really good queen, and she just didn't have time for that colony to grow correctly or replace the brood. There's a lot of things. Just because it's weak in the spring doesn't mean it's bad. It may mean there was other situations which caused it to be weaker than others.
but if it's a drone layer, you know, but if you look at the brood pattern and she's a drone layer, she's laying drones and worker brood, you're going to pinch her. Yeah.
But just because she's small, the colony is weak. If it's weak, it will never get out of its own rear end to get growth, okay? Because it doesn't have the population dynamics to do it. Once it overcomes that problem, a month later, when you combine them, now you're in a warmer season. It is exponentially growing quickly. You give it a new queen, and it grows very quickly. But in the cold weather, it holds it back, and it will never grow. You'll have that same 3 frames for 3 more months, and it will never do anything.
Yeah.
So basically, just put 2 different bee hives together.
Slap them together. Let them figure it out.
A little smoke.
It's just like when you and your wife or husband or girlfriend or whatever get together,